The LinkedIn Podcast Network is sponsored by SAP. SAP Business AI. Embedded across SAP solutions, it drives immediate impact. From Joule, your digital assistant, to AI-powered capabilities portfolio-wide, make confident decisions using your own data. SAP Business AI. Revolutionary technology, real-world results. That's SAP Business AI.
Hey, what are you doing this Thursday? If you'll be in New York City, why not join us for a special Cocktails and Conversation event when our next Big Idea Club curator, Daniel Pink, is going to be talking with legendary magazine editor Adam Moss about Adam's new bestseller, The Work of Art, How Something Comes from Nothing. So come hang out with us, have a drink, maybe network a little, and ask your questions about creativity. You can get tickets to the live event, or if you're not in New York, find out how to join via live stream by going to nextbigideaclub.com/events, or use the link in the episode notes. See you there. Now here's today's show.
LinkedIn presents.
Hi, everyone. It's Monday. I'm your host, Michael Kovnat, and this is the Next Big Idea Daily, the show that gives you quick insights from the latest nonfiction books, making it effortless for you to get smarter while sipping your morning coffee. Just make sure to click follow in your podcast player to get our future episodes and sign up for our Book of the Day newsletter using the link in the episode notes. So today's question, how do you spot talent? If you're hiring or putting together a team, you definitely want to surround yourself with creative, skilled, motivated people. But actually finding such folks can be tough. In the book, Talent, How to Identify Energizers, Creatives, and Winners Around the World, influential economist and best-selling author Tyler Cowen presents research on the art and science of attracting and retaining individuals who can truly move your organization forward. Tyler is a professor at George Mason University and one of the most widely read economists working today. His co-author, Daniel Gross, is a serial entrepreneur and investor whose latest venture, Pioneer, is a startup accelerator focused on finding innovative talent around the world. Our curator, Malcolm Gladwell, says their book is what happens when two brilliant and profoundly iconoclastic minds apply their imagination to one of the hardest of all business problems, the search for good people. Here's Tyler to share the big ideas from the book.
Talent is a critical, and indeed the critical asset in modern economies. According to one recent estimate, the total value of talent, or human capital, in the world is about $552 trillion. So how we mobilize talent, how we identify talent, how we induce talent to reach for greater ambition and greater aspirations, those are truly fundamental issues in determining the successes of our societies. If you look at the American economy since 1960, it is estimated that at a bare minimum, 20 to 40% of the growth in the United States economy has come from the better allocation of talent, in this case, women and minorities. We see many regions throughout the world that today are much greater sources of talent than before. Look, for instance, at India and how many individuals born in India have become top-tier CEOs in Silicon Valley. Decades ago, that was not happening. These individuals are now creating more value and also giving some of that value back to India. And that is a sign that we are not sufficiently optimistic, not sufficiently aspirational about how much better identification and mobilization of talent can do for us. Focus on soft networks of social connection. That is, you need to be connected to the world in the right way if you want to find the best talent. If you think of the talent problem as you sitting in a chair and issuing proclamations about who are the smartest people or who are the most hardworking people, you will have only limited success. The way you truly succeed with talent identification is by getting the talented people to want to find you. This is what economists call a decentralized mechanism, as outlined in the works of Nobel laureate Friedrich Hayek. So on any given day, it may not seem urgent, your outreach to the rest of the world, but the image you project. You could say, what kind of bat signal are you sending? Who is showing up at your door? Who wants to meet you? Who thinks it is something important to recommend you to your friends? Those are all instances of soft networks for talent identification. And if you invest ex ante, preemptively, in those soft networks, make them strong, convincing, persuasive, and appealing, that is the first key to doing well at talent. A related idea for success in talent identification is using scouts. They could be explicit scouts whom you pay directly, or they just could be people who are aligned with your mission and want you to do well, or maybe they want to help out their friends by recommending them to your institution. Successful institutions at talent search and identification are very good at mobilizing scouts. Again, you want to have decentralization on your side, not working against you. How to conduct an interview so you can get more information from that interview rather than less information. Our key piece of advice there is to get the interview into conversational mode as quickly as possible. We observe so many interviews that are essentially bureaucratic processes done only to satisfy the requirements of human resources departments. So you can ask a candidate, well, please tell us about a mistake you made in your previous job. That's an okay question, but these days just about everyone comes prepared with an answer. They'll have an answer that indicates they're capable of being self-aware to some degree, but they're not going to let on about some truly vital mistake where you might then decide not to hire them. So if you ask that question, mainly you're just testing for prep. Testing for prep is fine, but if that's all you're doing, you're not going to learn that much from the interview. So our key is simply get the person talking about something that they did not come prepared to discuss. It can be an interest of theirs. It can be their own understanding of how they approach some part of their lives. It could be about their favorite sports team. But when the person is in conversational mode, you will get a better sense of that individual's personality characteristics, intellect, ability to relate to other people, ability to explain things. Just how do they meet new, novel situations? How well do they communicate? How do they think on their feet? So conversation is what people do most of the time in most jobs. So the interview itself should be about conversation. So it will depend on context, but here's just a few questions we like to ask in some settings in interviews. First, which of your beliefs are you most likely wrong about? Or, what's the most courageous thing you've ever done? Or, if you joined us and then in 3 to 6 months you were no longer here, why would that be? Or, what did you like to do as a child? Or try this one. Did you feel appreciated at your last job? What was the biggest way in which you did not feel appreciated? And that's a way to see if the person simply gets upset in almost any environment they would be placed in. You feel the tone of their explanation of how it was they were or were not appreciated. 2 final questions. How did you prepare for this interview? Or what is something esoteric that you do? When you're talking with a candidate or doing an interview, you want to focus on what that candidate actually does. You want to look at demonstrated preference. So one question we like to ask candidates is simply the following. What are the open tabs in your browser right now? That gets at how a person spends his or her time. It gets at their true interests. It's not so important what those open tabs are, but rather how the person talks about them and thinks about them. Does the person show a lot of enthusiasm for what they're reading online? Do they show a good command of detail? You'll also find out maybe what kind of mind they have or how they make decisions. So some people will have 200 or 300 open tabs, and their life is a kind of informational chaos, but they'll be attuned to many informational online developments. Other people are super neatniks, and they have 0 inbox for their email and close out all their browser tabs each evening. That will be good for some kind of jobs, less advantageous for others. Another question we like to ask candidates is simply to see how well they are aiming for continual self-improvement. So I like to ask the question, what is it you do to improve for your career that is similar to a classical pianist practicing scales every day? Again, the specific answer might matter, but you want to know, is the person thinking about self-improvement at all? Do they have any answer to that question? If the person simply hasn't thought about self-improvement, you'll get a lot of hemming and hawing and a long silence. But if the person gives you an enthusiastic answer, such as for a writer, well, I write every day and run what I'm doing by an editor, and I try to do that as frequently as possible, and I show my writing to all my friends, well, that at least is the beginning of an answer indicating there will be self-improvement and compounding returns over time. Daniel Gross and I have a favorite saying. It goes as follows: personality is revealed on weekends. In a person's spare time, what does he or she actually do? You want some sense of that, not the personal life, but what they do to improve themselves, to evaluate job candidates. When it comes to figuring out who is a good job candidate or who is a worthy recipient of an award or a fellowship, we think that very often intelligence is overrated, especially by smart people. Now, to be sure, it is true that for many jobs, to do the job at all, you may need to be at some certain level of intelligence. But above and beyond that margin, intelligence and success in the endeavor are remarkably weakly correlated. So don't focus too much on smarts alone. You might wonder then, well, what are some of the other categories I would look for in a job? So one would simply be energy. What's the person's energy level? Are they going to bring energy to this task all the time they're working on it? Another would just be durability. Does this person stick with projects? And again, to repeat the earlier idea, focus on compounding continuous returns to self-improvement. Does the person work well with others? Again, critical in virtually all workplace endeavors, often very much more important than intelligence. Another way of putting this is, how good is the person at using or relying on the intelligence of others? How good is the person at knowing when he or she does not have the right answer and ought to go be asking someone else? A personal favorite trait of mine that I look for is, how well does a person understand the hierarchies in various social institutions? So a lot of people can be smart or hardworking, but they're maximizing along the wrong hierarchies. And I have in mind here, say, people who become champion gamers, or maybe what they do with their lives is to play chess. And that can work great if you're at the very, very top of that distribution. But for a lot of people, those endeavors are maybe something they should do when they're a teenager, and then at some point in life, give it up for something more practical. So just seeing smarts and hard work isn't enough. You need to be able to look for candidates who take the smarts, the hard work, the conscientiousness, the high energy level, the ability to work well with others, and direct it toward the appropriate level of social organization for them to both get ahead for themselves and to add more value to your project. If you're interviewing someone or talking with someone who is potentially a team leader or a CEO or doing a startup, there's a question I'm especially fond of, and that's just to ask them, how ambitious are you? Because to be a leader, and again, this is a question for the leaders of organizations, you want someone who is truly ambitious in an important way, but also understanding where social value lies. It sounds like a silly question in a way, but when you are asking people to spell out the detail and enthusiasm of their ambition, you will learn something about it.
Thank you, Tyler. All right, listeners, you can get a copy of Talent wherever you get your books. And wherever you are on your business journey, we've got something for you at the Next Big Idea Club. From a curated hardback subscription service to an inspirational app, masterclasses, and live networking events like our upcoming conversation this week with Dan Pink and Adam Moss. Check it all out at nextbigideaclub.com and use the code DAILY to get a special discount. Come on back tomorrow. I'll have some big ideas for you from the new book, Hyper Efficient: Optimize Your Brain to Transform the Way You Work. You don't want to miss that one. I'm Michael Kovnat. See you tomorrow.